Hello, my name is Samantha, and welcome to the third lesson in the Girls in STEM Java curriculum. Last lesson, we talked about if statements and logic. Today, you'll be introduced to strings and some ways to manipulate them. I'd like to introduce Sarah, who will be the instructor for today's lesson.
Hello, and welcome to your third Girls in STEM lesson. We'll start our lesson with some review problems from last week's lesson on if statements. We'll need to set up Replit for all of our review and practice problems today. We'll start by creating a new Replit called Lesson 3. You can pause the video here if you need to. We will quickly review some key concepts from our Lesson 2 video on if statements. If you have not yet watched that lesson, we recommend that you watch it before continuing this one. An if statement has a condition which is first checked. For example, a condition may include checking if a variable is less than a certain number. If this condition is true, only then will the code under the if statement be executed. If the condition is false and an else if statement exists, the else if statement will provide another condition to test. Keep in mind that you may have multiple else if statements. Finally, if all of the if statements and else if statements are false, else statements provide a final path of execution and do not include a condition. Now, let's work on some review problems. Our first problem asks us to create a variable of integer type called num. Then we will create an if-else statement to check if this variable num is a multiple of 5. Keep in mind that your variable does not need to be called num. You can name it whatever you want, such as number. Our second problem asks us to create two integers and print true if either the sum or the difference is 10. You can pause the video here, work through the problems on your own, and resume the video once you have attempted or completed the problems. Our first question asks us to create a variable of integer type called num and check if num is a multiple of 5. To do this, we need to start by creating our variable. We start with the data type int, followed by the variable name num, and finally the value we are assigning to the variable. Here we've set num to 20, but you may set it to any integer you want. Now we can create an if-else statement. The if statement condition should check if num is a multiple of 5. To do this, we can divide num by 5 and see if its remainder is equal to 0. To get the remainder, we use the modulus operator or a percent sign. If the remainder is 0, then the condition is met and we can print a statement saying num is a multiple of 5. Note that we use two equal signs to check if two numbers are equal. Although we've set num to 20 in this example, and 20 is a multiple of 5, we could have set num to a different value, such as 21. If num is 21, then our if statement condition is false, because the remainder of 21 divided by 5 is 1, not 0. Then we need to have an else statement. Our else statement has no condition and states that num is not a multiple of 5. Our second question asks us to create two integer variables and print true if either the sum or difference is 10. We start by creating two integers variables, num1 and num2. The if statement should check if the sum of num1 and num2 is equal to 10. If this is true, we print true. If this is false, we move on to the else if statement. This condition uses the math absolute value function to check if the absolute value of the difference between the variables is 10. If this is true, we print true. If none of these conditions are true, we print false. Great job on completing the review problems. Now we'll move on to today's topic, strings. A string is a variable that contains a collection of characters. Strings, unlike characters which use single quotes, use double quotes. In Lesson 1, we introduced Java data types, like integers, floats, and booleans. String is also a data type. As our first exercise, we can create a variable with type string and set it to a value. In our example, our variable is called school and Canyon Crest Academy is assigned to it. When you print out school, what happens? You can pause the video here and write the code in a replit and press run. Your console should print Canyon Crest Academy. Note that the double quotes do not get printed, only the characters between them. If we look back at lesson 1 and the code snippet on the slide, our arguments, hello and world, were both strings. Okay, so now that we've gone over the basics of what a string is and how they might be used, here's a list of some of the string methods that are used in Java. You can see what each method does and examples of how to use them in your code. This is a great site to refer back to if you need to when following along with any of the practice problems. Now that we've gone over the string methods, let's do some practice problems using them. The first problem asks you to create a string that contains your name and then find the length of the string and print it. For the second problem, create any string with a length of at least 5 and return the first 3 characters. The third problem asks you to create a string containing the words "coding's the best," "I love to code," regardless of your actual feelings about coding, and find the index of the word code. You can pause the video here, work through the problems on your own, and resume the video once you have attempted or completed the problems. Okay, now we're going to review the answers to these practice problems. For problem 1, you first needed to create a string containing your name. Then you could use the length method to print the string length in a print statement. For the second problem, you first needed to create a string with a length of at least 5. Using the substring A, B method, we can return the first 3 characters by putting 0, 2 in the parentheses. Remember, since the index begins at 0 and goes up to but does not include 3, it will return a string with the characters at the indices 0, 1, and 2, which would be the first 3 characters. To complete the third problem, first you needed to create the string that contained the phrase about coding. Then you could use the index of method to find the index of the word code. Since spaces are included as characters, the first location of code is at index 30. Remember that the index of method gives the index of the first character in the word. Now that we've practiced with the first string methods, here's a list with some more useful methods. As with the previous list, you can see what each method does and examples of how to use them in your code. Feel free to refer back to the slide if you need to when working on the practice problems. Here are some practice problems that involve using the methods that were just listed. For the first problem, create 3 strings, with 2 of the strings set as the same word or phrase. Make the third string something different. Then, use the appropriate method to test if the strings are the same. If they're the same, print true, and if they aren't, print false. For the second problem, create 2 strings containing words. Using the appropriate method, compare the 2 strings to determine if the first word should be placed before or after the second word in the dictionary. As you can see, there's a simple output to model your code after. You can pause the video here, work through the problems on your own, and resume the video once you have completed or attempted these problems. Now that you've completed or attempted the problem, let's go over the answers. For the first problem, you should have started by creating the 3 strings. Then, using the equals method, you can check whether or not 2 of the strings contain the same word or phrase. By putting the method within print statements, you can make it so that if the strings are the same, true is printed, and if they differ, false is printed. For the second problem, recall that the compare to method compares 2 strings alphabetically by returning either a positive number, a negative number, or 0. Because the compare to method returns integer values, we can create a separate variable, call it compare, which stores the output value. Using an if statement, we can print the appropriate statement depending on the value of compare. Once again, here is another list with some more useful methods. As with the previous two lists, you can see what each method does and examples of how to use them in your code. Feel free to refer back to the slide if you need to when working on the practice problems. Here are some practice problems that involve using the methods that were just listed. For the first problem, create a string containing the text between the quotation marks on the screen. Then replace all of the K's with A. For the second problem, create and print out a string. Using the appropriate method, change the string to only have uppercase characters and print out the string. Then, using the appropriate method, change the string to only have lowercase characters and print out this string. You can pause the video here, work through the problems on your own, and resume the video once you have attempted or completed these problems. Now that you have completed or attempted the problems, let's go over the answers. For the first problem, you should have first created the string and then use the replace method to replace all instances of a character with another. In this case, we replaced all of the K characters with A characters. For the first problem, you should have started by creating a string. Then to change the string to only uppercase characters, use the toUppercase method. Finally, to change the string to only lowercase characters, use the toLowercase method.
Hi, I'm Alexis, and thank you so much for watching. Congrats on completing your third Girls in STEM lesson. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at our email ccagirlswhocode@gmail.com or comment below. I wanted to thank the following on the production team for all their hard work that went into this lesson. All of the slides and videos in this series are available on our website and in the description below. I hope you'll join us again in our next lesson on scanners.